It's James from AutoSolve. I'm going to cover today a case study that's in the workshop. It's a Volkswagen Polo 1.4. It's a BUD engine, so 1.4 16 valve. It's been booked in for us to replace a control unit for another replacement unit. It's having the control unit exchanged because the vehicle's suffering from a problem. It was booked into the garage that have booked it into us for Misfire, and they've done some initial diagnosis, done all the sort of basic checks. They've done, checking out spark plugs, ignition coils, that type of thing. And their diagnostic pass led them to do a compression test. They run a compression test, and the values obviously didn't look tip-top. They've had the head off, so the head's been removed, and it's had a valve job in an attempt to make the misfire disappear. But unfortunately, they put the vehicle back together. The head job didn't cure the problem, still misfiring. So they suspect it's a control unit. So the vehicle sent here for a control unit replacement. We've replaced the control unit, and unfortunately, the misfire is still present. So now at this stage, they've asked us, can we have a quick look to see if we can work out what's going wrong. Obviously, they're up against it now in terms of time they've had the vehicle, and also the repair bill's looking pretty pricey. So the job for us now is to do a diagnosis to try and find out exactly what the cause of the misfire is, and I'm going to take you through some quick steps about things that we can do to suss out the misfire. So what I've got here is the gas analyzer. So really, in this situation with a problem with the vehicle with a misfire, what we need to do first of all is understand, is the misfire to do with mechanicals? So do we have a lack of compression? Because the three things we need for great combustion are fuel, spark and compression, and all of those three things need to be in the right order at the right time. So what the gas analyzer will do for us, it will show us, if we start the vehicle up, do we have bags of too much air, i.e. lack of fuel, bags of fuel, i.e. a problem with either air, mechanical, or a fuel pressure problem. Obviously with this vehicle, it's misfiring on one cylinder only, and that cylinder has been identified as cylinder 4. Easy way of doing that is obviously either to take this cover off and get to the plugs, or you can do a power balance. Power balance is the old cylinder contribution test. By removing a fuel injector on each one of the cylinders, we should be able to identify which cylinder, when we pull the injector off, doesn't drop the RPM. It came here with them identifying number 4. The basic check that we've done does verify that cylinder 4 is in trouble. Now we just need to work out why. So I'm going to pop the gas analyzer, just doing his quick zero calibration, so we'll just wait for that to catch up, and then what we're going to do is start the vehicle up, put the gas analyzer, the sample pipes at the back end, and we're going to run the vehicle, and we're going to just check out the gases, how they're reading, and that will give us the next step of direction. Do we need to go ignition or mechanical? Do we need to go fuel timing and the order, or do we need to go fuel system? So we'll just wait for the gas analyzer to warm up, and then we'll be straight back to you. Okay, so now gas analyzer is back on. We're looking at it's a 4 gas analyzer. It's actually 5 gas with the NOx in there. We're going to primarily focus on hydrocarbons. The hydrocarbons will give us an indication if we've got too much fuel. If the hydrocarbons are looking moderate to good, we know it's probably not fueling issue. Obviously spark being down can affect hydrocarbons and have an elevated level. With the more modern system, when you have a spark down or a cylinder misfire, generally it cuts off one of the injectors over time to prevent thermal damage to the cat. So we're going to start this vehicle up. We'll probably exhibit the misfire. It'll start shaking, shuddering, so the camera may well vibrate a bit. But what we'll do is we'll take a look at the gas analyzer readings and see what happens. We're not that worried whether the cat heats up or not. Even if the cat's not hot, if the hydrocarbons are a couple hundred parts per million, we're not going to get too excited. What we're going to really expect, if it is a fueling issue, because again they've done all the sparks and they've been through the mechanical, is that we should see thousands of parts per million on the hydrocarbon. So let's take a look. We're going to start the car up and we'll see what it gives. So there, hopefully you can pick up the shudder on the engine. It's vibrating quite drastically, and over on the gas analyzer, we'll watch that now. The pump's going to draw some gases from the tailpipe, and we should see the hydrocarbon readings. And there we are, look, within 10 seconds we've got 1200 parts per million. now we've got 4,700, even 7,800, even with a misfire and standard fuel, we wouldn't necessarily see that high level. We'll just watch it now to see where it settles down to, and if we've got more than a few hundred, we're going to start to get excited and sort of confirm our suspicions that we could. Oh, there we are. She's leveled out a bit there now. Oh, and there it comes back in again. So because we're running on a cold engine, obviously it's happy to run with a bit of excess fuel, but there, hydrocarbons at 5,600 are our first indication that we've probably got a fueling issue with this car. Just going to switch her off. It's interesting as we're looking there, we're down to 2,300 parts per million, 1,600. And then it's going into its funky behaviour. So what we've got to be careful of is if it does cut the cylinder, the fuel on that cylinder, which is probably what's happened, we can see the hydrocarbons dripping down now. 600. Oh, and that's sounding pretty bleak. So I'm just going to switch her off there. And we'll just let that gas analyzer run, let it purge the system, and then I think what we should do next with that cylinder running those huge amounts of hydrocarbons, we may well run the engine now, and we'll pull the oscilloscope up and we'll start to check out if we can see from a very sort of non-intrusive perspective, can we see what's going on? Is there anything identifiable with that fuel injector? With the fuel injector fault, obviously we can have an issue that the fuel injector itself is jammed open, and so as soon as we get rail pressure, the injector control doesn't matter and it's pumping fuel through. What we saw in our gas analyzer suggests the injector can be controlled. As the vehicle was running, it's noticed a misfire, the cat prevention's come in and it's trimmed back that fuel injector, and my hydrocarbon level has dropped down. So we're guessing it's not jammed open mechanically because the fuel control has stopped that. That little characteristic we've seen with the hydrocarbons dropping when the ECU is pulling off the injector, stopping it from working, also suggests we don't have a wiring fault. Obviously the other issue that we can have here is if the fuel injector wiring on the control side, so where the ECU grounds the injector to open it, if that was shorted out and the injector's open all the time, again the ECU wouldn't be able to invoke its cat saving injector shut-off process. So we've sort of ruled out, because of the behaviour that we've seen at the gas analyzer, it isn't mechanically stuck open, and also that the injector wire isn't isn't shorted out. So next step, let's get in there and have a look at the injector and see if we can see what's going on. Definitely we've confirmed excessive hydrocarbons are probably a rich mixfire. So we'll wheel the scope up now and take a look. Okay, so we've got the trolley wheeled over here. It's got an old PC from the office, and it's got a picoscope 4 channel. On the picoscope, because we're measuring injectors, I've got the attenuator on channel 1. What we're going to do is fire up the Diagnostic Assistant software. It's a great Pico companion, and it helps you understand testing and measuring a lot of the components. For an injector it's quite easy to do a measurement on there, but we use it, it's a good process to get into. It's going to enable us to have a preset and also some component test information around things to look for that injector and where and what to measure. So what we'll do is we'll go to guided, and on guided we'll click fuel injector, and on petrol, and on petrol we'll find the fuel injector, injector solenoid. There we go. We'll click on that. It opens up 4 windows for us. What we're measuring and the component and a description, then where to measure, and obviously what pins. There's fault codes and hints and tips in there. Then we'll go to the test information, how we should be testing it and things we should look out for, and then last but not least the test results. So it shows a comparison waveform, but also over and above that we can also load the PS data, and what that does is it fires up the Pico software and puts a preset in there including time base, any triggers that we want to use, and that helps us gain a good image from the component. Whilst that's firing up, we're just going to hook my test leads up. So I'm using a sky hook hooked around the bonnet. I'll pull the leads down there, and we're going to separate the measurement leads from the ground connection. We're going to put the ground for ease of use onto the battery negative. Oh, sack the juggler. And we're going to use blue channel number 1, blue lead. Hook the leads up over the top, make sure they're nice and out of the way. We don't want to dangle those down the front because they'll get caught into the cooling fan potentially. I'll just get the lead up over the top. I've popped a probe in there just to save you watching me struggle do that. I did that slightly before we set the video running. So now we're connected and measured. Picoscope's fired up now, and it's got a auto solve, a diagnostic assistance sample waveform on there. We'll fire up this Misfire beastie. We'll get the injector to start working, and then we'll do a comparison of what we've got against what we should have. So let's stoke her up. There she goes. We'll press the play on the picoscope, and we'll just let that warm up a sec. Just going to trim on a time base, have a look, and now we can see a sample waveform. I'll just pause that for a second. Okay, so the sample waveform shown on the screen, and we've got the on time, the injector controlled, then the off time. We've got our back EMF spike, and also then the injector kick where the injector's moving through the windings. So what we'll do is we'll start the car up again. I'm going to perform a trick which is pretty cool in the Pico. We're going to set a reference waveform. So I'm going to take my bad waveform and put that in the background, and then going to measure a companion injector and lay one on top of the other to make sure that we can see any differences. Sometimes the difference between a good one and a bad one is very subtle, and so this method of overlaying is pretty good because it enables us to see exactly any areas of concern. So we'll start the car back up, and then we'll set up our overlay. Here we go. So I'm going to go to Tools, Reference Waveforms, Duplicate, Edit, make it magenta, click OK, click OK, click OK, and then set the scope going. And what we should then start to see are two waveforms, one laid over the other. And so what now I can do is I can move my injector to another. I'm just going to use another probe, and what I'm going to do now is measure a companion injector. Whoa, get that one in there. And we can see we've got the two waveforms one after the other. It's jigging around a bit because we've got obviously a slight rough running concern. There's our one injector, and there's the other. I'm just going to pause that on the screen. So what we've got now is the original injector underneath, and then we've got the non-misfire injector, we're saying a companion injector next door. So I'll just switch off the engine, and we'll take a look, because we thought we were on number 4. So I've measured number 4 and number 2, and we'll do a quick comparison now, just to see if we can see what's going on. Okay, so I've zoomed in on the injector patterns now, and we've got the comparative waveform and the live waveform, and what we're looking for is a difference between the two. So we can see the injectors pulled to ground here by the control unit, and then they're let go. We get this part here, which is the back EMF, or the back, the collapse of energy as the injector's commanded to stop. And then as this injector's commanded to stop, the pintle inside the injector moves back down to shut off. And what we see in this element of the waveform, here and here, should be the injector's travel from fully open to fully closed. Essentially it causes a disturbance in the field, and what we can see here, absolutely here, is a kink. And so this is indicating some form of movement, some form of disturbance in the field, and we can see the difference between our comparison and our live waveform. There is a big difference. This really confirming that there is something wrong physically with the injector. We can't see anything through the opening phase, but we can, through the voltage waveform, have a very good indication that during the closing phase there's an anomaly. This is probably enough now for us to go back to the customer and say, Mr. Customer, we've done a couple of checks. We suspect a fuel injection, number 1 because of the hydrocarbons, number 2 because it's misfiring, and number 3, we've backed up that suspicion with some evidence from a waveform that says during the injector closing phase we have an issue. Now we're not quite sure what we're going to find here, but what we would assume would be either the injector sticking or stuck, and possibly that's why it's giving us our over fueling issue. So next step now is we'll pull the airbox off, we'll have a look in by the injector, and in fact we may need to pull the injectors out and put them on the flow bench to just get a good view about what's going on. Okay, so we've got a few tools now. We're just going to take the airbox off. We're going to use our special Volkswagen clip adapter. We've clipped this one on here. We'll pull the clip off and should stop it clinging back into place. Pull the housing off of there. Yeah. We'll pull the clip off of here and the small breather pipe, and this should give us access to, just check the ends of the filter, there's nothing in there. So here we can see our injector rail now and our injectors. One of the things we can do in this situation, the injectors are clipped into the rail, so we may well just loosen off the rail, and once we've loosened off the rail, first test we can do is lift the rail out of the manifold just to check that we've got the injector isn't leaking, because one thing we suspect it might be is leaking, maybe not permanently, but partially dribbling is one of the situations that we could face. So we should be able to just lift the rail off. There we go. What I'm going to do now is, hopefully, I'm going to prime the fuel system, key on engine off. There's no signs of injector leakage. We're just going to take a quick look. The O-rings look good. So I'm just going to now switch ignition on. We'll get the fuel system to prime, and when it primes, if there's any leak, we should see some evidence of fuel, like a witness mark, and we can hear the throttle body there, but there is no evidence of excessive fuel coming out of the injector. Okay, so what that enables us to do then is, the injector isn't dribbling all the time. We get 3 bar of rail pressure, key on engine off. There isn't any dribble from any of the injectors, especially not our suspected one. So next steps are to pull the clips off, pull the injectors out, and then we'll take them to our fuel rail tester, and we'll run them through the machine and see what comes. Okay, so we've installed the injectors in the ASNU machine. We're going to run first of all a basic test. We're just going to set it up for the right sort of injectors. And we're going to do a quick prime, which is going to basically fill the rail full of fuel pressure, and we're just going to see on my gauge here about 3.5 bar, 50 psi. And firstly we're looking at do we have a mechanical leak. Now we assume we didn't with on the car because we had no dribbles, but this one allows us then to do that same process, and we've got no drips. What we're going to do now is, we've got them in firing order position here. So number 1 is at the far left hand side. I'm just going to put the connectors on for the injectors, and we're just going to see then, we'll run the prime, we'll just see that we've got injector triggers from all of the injectors. Okay, we've not quite got number 4 on there. Okay, so we can see with the prime it's bleeding the air out of the injectors, and so what we're going to do then, if I put this one up out the way so we can be sure that we can see the injector. Got a slightly dicky connector. I think I've got the lead on backwards there. There we go. So now all 4 injectors we can see are pulsing. The idea behind this viewing pane here is that we get some idea of what's going on inside the injectors. So we're going to run it through a program. We're not that concerned at the moment about spray patterns. Obviously is a concern, and what we can start to see is, if I change the value of each of the injectors, we can start to see, I'm going to just up the fuel rates. Now, one of the things we can see, I don't know if it's coming across on the video, is number 4, the spray pattern and the volume looks much bigger than the others. I can select individual injectors, 2, 3, 4. Now the spray on number 4 compared to number 3 is much bigger. So there's obviously something going wrong inside the injector, not quite sure why. But what we're going to do at this stage now is we're going to lift the injectors out. There's definitely a spray issue. What we're going to do now is run a volume test, and what this allows us to do is, for 30 seconds it will run the injectors, and then the graduated tubes will fill up with fluid. It'll do one at a time, and so what we'll see is the injectors basically delivering their fuel quantity. What we're anticipating will happen is the injector for number 4, our effector cylinder, has either got loads of fuel or no fuel. So let's just have a quick look. So it runs the injectors for 3.5 bar for 30 seconds, and when the 30 seconds on the counter, 24, 25, 26, it's going to hit about 60 or 65. Okay, so there's the first one, here's the second one, and so we'll just let that run. There's our second one's completed now, and we can see the second one's pretty even Stevens actually. So we've got 62 in there, and we've got 62 in number one. So number one and number two are fairly well balanced. What we're anticipating obviously is the last in the batch is going to flow, looking at the spray pattern and the volumes initially from the test, it's going to be much bigger than that which we've got there. So this should 20, 28, 29, 30, so we're going to be about right. Okay, so here's injector number 4, our affected cylinder, and we can see the rate of increase on that injector is massive. And that's 10 seconds, 11, 12, so 12 seconds it's filled up to 60. It's going to be touch and go. We may have to abort the test, it may well top the tube, and this is obviously the reason why we've got massive overfueling on that one cylinder. 25, 26, 27, it should get just to the end. There we go, and it's just completed before it's filled the tube. And we can see there then that injector 4 is flowing twice the volume of injectors 1, 2 and 3. This is the root cause of our massive excessive hydrocarbons, and now it's a case of really the evidence really concluding that that injector is the root cause of our problem. So we'll pop the injectors back up here. We've got our evidence, so we can make a note of that data. We'll just empty the tubes back into the sump, filter back on the top, and that's surefire evidence we've got an injector.